If you had asked me 5 years ago what mattered most in life, I would have said money. Without hesitation, without guilt, without shame. My name is Isabella Gray, and for most of my adult life, I believed love was a luxury only the rich could afford. I grew up watching my mother count every dollar like it was gold dust, her hands trembling every time the bills came due. My father left when I was 12, chasing his next big deal and leaving us with nothing but broken promises. From that day forward, I made myself a vow I would never be poor again. By 27, I had climbed the rungs of the corporate ladder like a woman possessed. I was sharp, efficient, and untouchable, the kind of person who made deals while others made excuses. My apartment on the 32nd floor overlooked the city skyline. At night, I'd stand there with a glass of wine, watching the world below, a sea of lights, each one representing someone who hadn't made it as far as I had. People called me ambitious. They meant ruthless. I didn't mind. The first time I made a 6-figure bonus, I cried, not out of joy, but out of vindication. Every sleepless night, every skipped family dinner, every broken relationship suddenly felt worth it. At least that's what I told myself. Then I met Liam Hart. He wasn't like the others. No designer suit, no gold watch, no practiced smile that screamed networking opportunity. He worked in our building's maintenance department, quiet, grounded, unhurried. I first saw him fixing the elevator I was impatiently waiting for. "Looks like it's taking a while," I said sharply. "Some of us have meetings to get to." He looked up, wiped his hands, and smiled. "Some of us are trying to make sure you don't get stuck between floors." His tone was calm, almost teasing. I remember thinking, how dare he talk to me like that? And yet, something about him made me pause. That night, I couldn't shake his voice from my head. There was something steady about it, something real. A few days later, I saw him again in the lobby. He was holding a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and he offered one to me. "You look like you could use this more than I can." I should have walked away. People like me didn't accept coffee from maintenance staff, but I took it. And for the first time in years, I smiled without meaning to. Weeks passed, and our paths kept crossing, at first by chance, then by choice. He'd find excuses to ask if the elevator was running smoothly. I'd find excuses to thank him. Conversations turned into coffee breaks into long walks after work. He talked about simple things: his sister's bookstore, his dream of traveling across Europe, his love for fixing things because, as he said, broken things deserve a second chance. I didn't tell him much about my life. How could I? My world was built on deals, deadlines, and carefully measured smiles. His was built on honesty. I didn't want to taint it, but one evening, as we sat watching the city lights from a park bench, he said something that cracked the armor I'd spent years building. "You know," he said, "you look like someone who's always waiting for life to start." I frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" He smiled sadly. "It means you're running so fast after something that you don't notice you already have everything you need to be happy." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew he was right. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't open my laptop when I got home. I just sat by the window and listened to the rain. Over the next few months, Liam became the one part of my life that didn't feel like a transaction. We shared laughter, secrets, silences that didn't need filling. He didn't care about what I earned or what I wore. He cared about how I was, really was, and slowly, the walls I had built began to crumble. But love, as I was about to learn, doesn't come without cost, because in the world I lived in, a world of numbers and names, feelings were liabilities. And the moment you let someone in, you gave them the power to break you. I didn't know it yet, but the choice between love and money was already waiting for me. Sharp as glass, quiet as fate. Love has a way of sneaking into the smallest cracks of your life, the quiet moments between phone calls, the pauses in conversations you never meant to have. I never planned for Liam. He simply appeared, and before I knew it, he was part of the rhythm of my days. But the higher I climbed at Ardent & Co., the further I drifted from the version of myself he saw. The one who laughed freely, who didn't measure life in contracts and commissions. Promotion season was coming. The partners were watching. The competition was brutal, and every presentation felt like a battlefield. I was the favorite, the unstoppable force. Everyone knew that if anyone was going to make senior partner before 30, it would be me. Everyone except Liam. He never cared for titles. "What's the point of winning," he once said, "if you forget who you are in the process?" I used to brush off his words as naive, but lately they lingered, quiet echoes I couldn't silence. One Thursday evening, he came to my office. I was buried in spreadsheets, the glow of my screen painting my face cold blue. "You haven't eaten all day," he said, holding up a paper bag that smelled like takeout noodles. I looked up, startled. "How did you even get past security?" He smiled. "I told them I was here to fix something." I sighed but smiled anyway. He sat across from me, setting the food down like a peace offering. For a few minutes I forgot about the numbers. We ate in silence, just the hum of the city below and the flicker of office lights above. "You're working too much," he said softly. "That's what it takes," I replied. "Maybe. But you look tired." Izzy. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes, the kind that comes from pretending you don't care. I froze. He'd never used that tone before, gentle but firm. And he was right again. I didn't respond because the truth was a wound I wasn't ready to open. A week later, my boss called me into his office. "Gray," he said, tapping his pen, "the investor from New York is flying in. If this deal closes, you're partner. But if we lose him?" He didn't need to finish. It was the opportunity I had dreamed of since my first day at Ardent, the moment that would cement my name on the door. The meeting was scheduled for Friday night. The same night Liam had planned something important. He wouldn't tell me what, only that it mattered. I told him I'd try to make it after the meeting. He nodded, but I saw the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. Friday came fast. The meeting stretched late. The investor wanted changes, figures, guarantees. My phone buzzed, Liam's name flashing on the screen, but I silenced it. Again and again. By the time I stepped out of the boardroom, it was almost midnight. Rain streaked across the glass as the city shimmered below. I checked my phone, 5 missed calls, 1 message. "I waited for you, Izzy. I had something to tell you. Maybe another time." I felt a knot tighten in my chest, but I pushed it aside. I had done what needed to be done. That's what success demanded. Sacrifice. The next day, I found out what I had missed. Liam's sister called me. Her voice trembled. "He's leaving, Isabella. He got the scholarship for the restoration program in Florence. He waited to tell you, but I guess he thought you didn't care." My stomach dropped. Florence. That was his dream. To learn. To travel. To fix what others had thrown away. I stared at my reflection in the office glass. A woman in a tailored suit. Perfect makeup, perfect posture, and I hated her. I drove to his place. Heart pounding, but he was already gone. A note waited on his kitchen counter. "I love you, Izzy, but I can't be part of a life that only runs on schedules and deadlines. Maybe someday you'll find what you're chasing. I just hope it doesn't cost you everything." I folded the note and tucked it into my coat pocket, but it felt like I was holding a mirror, one that showed me everything I'd refused to see. The following weeks blurred together. Meetings, calls, promotions, congratulations. I got the title. Senior partner. My name engraved in silver on the office door. Everyone cheered. Champagne flowed. But when the celebration ended, I sat alone in the dark, staring at that same nameplate. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like a gravestone. The city glittered outside, but it wasn't beautiful anymore. It was loud, hollow, endless. I thought about Liam in Florence, probably sketching old cathedrals, laughing with strangers, living lightly. And I thought of myself, heavy with everything I had gained and everything I had lost. One night, I went to the park where we used to sit. The bench was cold, the city distant. I remembered his words. "You're running so fast after something that you don't notice you already have everything you need." Tears came without warning. The kind that burn because they carry regret. I had traded warmth for security, love for success, truth for approval. And the cruelest part was, I couldn't even say I didn't know better. The next morning, I called his sister. "How long will he be gone?" I asked. "A year. Maybe 2, I nodded silently. 2 years. Maybe by then, I could become someone worth coming back to." So I made a promise. Not the kind written in ink or whispered in desperation, but one carved quietly in my heart. I would learn to live differently. I started small, taking walks without checking my phone, visiting my mother more often, talking to people without scanning for opportunities. It wasn't easy. Old habits die loud. But every day, the noise in my head grew a little softer. I still had the note. Sometimes I'd take it out, unfold it, and read the last line again. I just hope it doesn't cost you everything. Maybe it already had, or maybe, just maybe, there was still time to earn it back. Earn it back. Time has a way of softening edges. Or maybe it just teaches you how to carry the sharp parts more quietly. 2 years had passed since Liam left for Florence. The city still pulsed with ambition, the skyline forever reaching upward. But something in me had changed. I wasn't the same woman who once measured life in profits and promotions. I still worked at Ardent & Co., still wore tailored suits and walked fast through glass corridors, but there was space in my days now. Silence, breath, reflection. I had taken up photography, of all things. A hobby Liam used to love. My weekends weren't for networking dinners anymore. They were for wandering through parks and old neighborhoods, capturing details I once overlooked. A child's laughter, the tilt of light on broken windows, the quiet poetry of ordinary moments. I didn't know it then, but I was learning how to see again. One Sunday morning, while sipping coffee in a small cafe downtown, I saw his name in my inbox. From Liam Bennett. Subject: Hello, stranger. My heart skipped. The world around me faded into background noise as I opened the message. Hey, Izzy, it's been a long time. Florence was transformative. I think you'd love it here. The art, the calm, the way people actually live instead of just survive. I'll be back in New York next month for an exhibition. Would you come? No expectations. Just two people who used to mean something to each other, seeing where they stand now. Lure. My hands trembled. I read it 3 times before I finally exhaled. For days, I debated whether to go. Part of me feared what I'd see in his eyes. Judgment, distance, or worse, indifference. But another part whispered that this was the moment life had been quietly leading me toward. So I went. The exhibition was held in a converted warehouse. Exposed brick, string lights, quiet jazz humming through the air. The space was filled with photographs of restoration projects, old Italian churches reborn in sunlight, sculptures saved from ruin. And there he was, standing by a large print of a cracked mosaic, his hair a little longer, his posture relaxed, a quiet confidence in his smile. When he saw me, the world slowed. Isabella Gray, he said softly, as though testing if the name still fit. Liam Bennett, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. We stood for a moment, the noise of the crowd fading around us. Then he smiled, the same lopsided grin that once disarmed me completely. You came. I almost didn't, I admitted. But then I remembered how you used to say that fear is just another way of wanting something too much. He chuckled. I said that? You did. You were always full of inconvenient wisdom. We walked through the exhibit together. Each photograph told a story. Decay turned to beauty, loss reborn as art. I could see his soul in the work, the gentleness I once thought was weakness now shining as strength. You've changed, he said finally. So have you. Yeah, he murmured. But some things never do. We ended up at a small table, by the exit, 2 glasses of wine between us, the city glittering through the tall windows. I heard you made partner, he said. I did, I answered quietly. But it doesn't mean what I thought it would. He nodded. It rarely does. I almost called you, I admitted, 100 times. But I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound like regret. He leaned forward. Sometimes regret is exactly what needs to be said. I looked at him then, really looked. The man sitting across from me wasn't the same boy who brought noodles to my office. He had grown, but his eyes still carried the warmth that once healed the restless parts of me. I'm sorry, Liam, I said, my voice trembling. For not showing up, for choosing the wrong things, for thinking love could wait. He took a slow breath, the kind that seems to carry years. I know. And maybe we both needed the distance to figure out what really matters. Silence settled between us, soft and heavy. Then he reached into his pocket and placed something on the table, a folded note. It was the same one I had kept for 2 years. My breath caught. "I found this in the drawer before I left," he said. "Figured it belonged to you more than me." I opened it. The words hadn't changed, but their weight had. "I just hope it doesn't cost you everything." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the ink. "It almost did," I whispered. "But I'm still here." He smiled, not out of pity or triumph, but recognition, the kind that only two people who've been broken in the same places can share. We talked for hours, about Italy, about the company, about the small, unremarkable things that somehow felt sacred. When the night ended, he walked me to my car. As we stood beneath the flickering streetlight, I hesitated. "Do you think people can really start over?" I asked. He thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe not from scratch, but we can start from truth." The words stayed with me long after I drove away. In the weeks that followed, we saw each other again, slowly, carefully. There were no grand gestures, no sweeping promises, just shared dinners, laughter, and the rediscovery of something fragile but real. I told him about my photography. He showed me sketches from his restoration projects. We spoke about fear, ambition, and the delicate art of balance. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing. I was living. One evening, while we walked through the park where we used to sit, he stopped and looked at me. "You know," he said, "I think the version of you I fell in love with was just waiting for this one to arrive." I laughed softly, eyes glistening. "And the version of you I pushed away. Maybe I had to lose him to understand what love actually means." The wind brushed against us, gentle and forgiving. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen differently that night 2 years ago. But maybe the truth is, some love stories aren't ruined by timing. They're refined by it. That night, I went home and looked around my apartment. The awards, the certificates, the sleek furniture, all once symbols of victory, now seemed quiet, unimportant. I opened my window, letting the city air fill the space. There was peace in knowing I could build success and still have a soul. That love and ambition weren't enemies. They just needed balance. A month later, I visited Liam's new studio. He was restoring a mural from the 1800s, faded paint, crumbling edges, but beneath the decay was beauty waiting to return. He looked up as I entered, his hands stained with color. "It's delicate work," he said, smiling. "If you rush it, you lose what makes it real." I stepped closer, watching the patterns re-emerge under his careful touch. "That sounds a lot like life," I murmured. He laughed quietly. "Maybe we finally figured it out." And for the first time in years, I felt it. Not the adrenaline of winning, but the calm of arriving. As I stood beside him, the afternoon light spilling through the tall windows, I realized something simple and profound. Money could build a house, but love made it home. Money could buy security, but only love could make me brave enough to lose it. And when Liam reached for my hand, his fingers warm and steady, I knew. This time, I wouldn't let go. Not because I was afraid of losing him, but because I finally understood what was worth keeping.